Hi folks, Jamie Watts here again for Connecting My Community. And the subject today is grief and loss. And we're here today at Hospice of the Nature Coast New Grief Center located in Palatka. And we're here today with Mary Rockefeller. She's a very good friend of mine. Hi Mary.
Hi.
And
Hi
she's
Jamie.
going to be sharing with us about the New Grief Center and some of the projects that are available, some of the things that are available to the community that I'm very excited about. This is the first time that we've really had a place where the community could come together with grief and loss. I think it's a very important subject, and of course you experience it every day, and you experience those that have lost someone and how the impact is in their life. And show us a little bit about your background and how you come to do what you do.
Okay. I am the manager for grief services for Hospice of the Nature Coast. I've been doing grief and loss work for the last 20 years. And I love my job. I love helping people go from feeling like their life is over sometimes to feeling this deep pain of grief, all the way through to helping them find a new life. It's wonderful work.
Well, thank you for that. Tell us a little bit about the programs that are available here through the Grief Center for people that do have grief and loss.
Okay. Well, the Wings Education Center is dedicated to supporting anyone who is dealing with the challenges of death and bereavement. And Hospice of the Nature Coast has a vision for this center, and that vision is to bring information to the community about the dying process.
Okay. Now, I understand there's some grief groups. Is that the correct term for that?
Right.
Grief groups that are available.
Well, grief groups that's part of it.
Okay.
As manager of the Grief and Loss Services, my part is to help anyone who is dealing with the challenge of loss and the pain of bereavement. Okay. A lot of things go on here. Hospice of the Nature Coast sponsors healthcare professionals,
sure,
nurses, and certified nursing assistants to come here to receive special training in palliative care. And ministers from the area churches come here to attend workshops to teach them how to support families through the loss of a loved one.
Yes.
And anyone in the community can come here to receive training as a Hospice of the Nature Coast volunteer.
Okay, well that's great.
Yeah.
Well, and that is important because especially with your doctors and your nurses and your pastors, they've received training, but not always in grief and loss. And working with those, sometimes they can feel awkward in those situations and not know what to say and do. And it's good to have that resource that's available to them. What about people? I know that the grief groups are really good for some people. What about if you want to get some help, but you don't feel like being in a group, or I feel like that's kind of overwhelming? Is there any other services that are available for that?
There are a lot of people who don't particularly want to join with other people, in their sharing their grief process,
sure,
and that's just fine. We have for them what we call our Good Grief Education Seminars.
Okay.
And that's where we have a cycle of 4 different seminars. We talk about the grief process, we talk about what is normal in grief, what kind of reactions, what kind of symptoms they can expect.
Sure.
We talk about subjects like their spiritual pain.
Right.
And we stress that grief is just like any part of life.
Yes.
It is a very important part of it, and the grief process is encoded into us as a healing process.
That brings a good point. I was just fixing to bring that up because I lost my father 5 years ago, and that was my experience too. So that process, that is a grief process, that is a healing. Just as when we injure our bodies physically, we go through that healing process. And in emotional levels, when we lose someone, we have to emotionally go through that healing process, and that grief is very, very important. And it has been my experiences that I needed help for a little while. And I got through that, and I had some good friends, and I went to some different grief groups myself and did that, and it really, really helped me. And I really encourage people to definitely do those things. Well, Mary, I understand that there's also programs for people that maybe don't feel comfortable in an environment where they're in a group like that. You have other programs that are available also, don't you?
Yes, we have individual counseling for people. That can be for anyone, but it is especially needed for people who have had a traumatic loss, who may have had a loss suddenly from cancer or suddenly from an accident.
Yeah.
So
I understand there's also a program for children.
Yes, we see people of all ages and every type of loss. We have marvelous camps for children and teenagers.
That's great.
And many of these kids are learning how to navigate death and loss probably for the first time in their lives.
And they can be really big in their life to have that happen to them. And I feel this is important. Also, I'm sure that you probably can give parents advice too when they start talking about that, because sometimes they're at a loss, they're dealing with the grief themselves, and then they don't know what to do with the children too. So, well, now I also understand what kind of cost is involved to be in these programs.
Well, Hospice of the Nature Coast believes that there is no better way to give to the community than to serve everyone through the pain of grief.
Yes.
All of our services are free of charge. And we not only serve our own hospice patients, but we serve the entire community.
Yes, and
so anyone can call us.
That's great. That's one of the things where we're so proud to be a part of this, and so proud to have you here, because you are that central source in the community for people that have grief and loss. It's a place to start. With the counseling, with the grief groups that you do here, I always want to stress to people it's important to understand that you'll never know until you try them. And always understand that come out, and I'm sure they can just come out and be a part of a group, and if they don't like it, then they're not really obligated to come back, are they?
Sure. No, not at all. We want everyone to be comfortable.
Sure.
We want everybody to get the kind of service that they need, and we feel like our broad range of services can serve everyone.
I believe they can
really
too.
Do.
And I think that by, like I said, coming out and just trying the program and seeing if you like it, and you never know until you try, and knowing there's not an obligation, there's not pressure to come back. I think that will help people tremendously in knowing that they can just come out and just see what they think about the program.
Sure.
Well, before we go, share with me some tips about grief and loss that people should be aware of that maybe would perhaps help them as they go through their grief and loss journey.
Certainly. Well, number one, I would say that you must give yourself the time and the space to grieve. We are very busy people, and grief, as a lot of people who are in the midst of it know, can be a demand. You're not always in control of it. But to successfully go through the grief process takes a lot of inner attention. It takes a lot of awareness. And there's a reason why it's called grief work. And you must give yourself the time and the space to do that. It's worthwhile.
Yeah, and I think it's important for people to understand also with the grief journey that it is not a set time. Some people, as they go through this journey, it will be quicker for others, and it will be longer for others.
That's right.
And I think we also have to be sensitive of people's needs, of understanding that when a family is going through a grief and a journey like that, I as a son may be at one point in the journey, and my mother may be at a different point, and we have to give people that time to understand that everybody kind of gets there at their own time is kind of what they do.
That's true. There's no timeline for grief. I would tell everyone to grieve in your own way.
Absolutely.
Your grief is unique. The grief is shaped by the relationship that you had with the person that you lost, and it's also shaped by your distinct temperament. So, like you said, different members of the same family can grieve in different ways, and that's not always understood.
Yes.
That can sometimes cause conflict in a
What's
family.
the best way they can get in contact with you to learn more about the grief and loss and the center and the programs that are available to them individually?
Okay, you can go to www.hospiceofthenaturecoast.org, and you can see all of our broad range of services for families, which includes our nurses, our medical director. We have many different services. I can't even begin to name them all. And the bereavement services, of course. And you can always call us here at the Palatka office. We're at 386-530-4600. And we would love to talk with you.
Well, thank you, Mary. Well, again, we're talking today about grief and loss, and Mary, it's been a pleasure being here.
It has really been a pleasure. Thank you for coming.
Oh, thank you for taking the time with us this afternoon and to learn more. So, well, folks, this is Jamie Watts for Connecting My Community. We'll have Mary's link on the website so that you'll be able to click and go directly there, and you can have contact information also. And thanks again for watching.